Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is TB Skyn, and Swain just got released on the PvE, and his updated design and his updated splashes just got put online. Now, I'm going to talk some about Swain in this video, but I'm not going to do a full breakdown and analysis of his character design. If you would like to see and hear that, you should subscribe to the Trinity Force podcast. That's a podcast that's one of the biggest League of Legends podcasts, certainly one of the best, and anytime a new champion or a new champion update is released, I go on there and I give my thoughts on the color design and the character design and how it's all fit together and what's the aesthetic language trying to tell you and all those sorts of things. So if you want that, you should subscribe to the Trinity Force podcast. There's going to be a link down in the description. What we're going to be talking about in this video, however, is the League aesthetic. What it has been, what it once was, and what it's going to be. And we're going to be talking especially about what it doesn't want to be, because there have been, among many other changes, there have been some pretty substantial changes to the aesthetic principles that underlie League of Legends, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. And that sounds a pretty highfalutin and esoteric, so let me put it a simpler way. League of Legends doesn't want to be ugly anymore. To explain what I mean, we're going to have to look a little bit at League of Legends past. Specifically, we're going to be looking at a little bit of Swain's past. This is his old splash art, the updated old splash art. It's not his completely original one. Take a look at Swain as he sits in this splash art. Take a look at his design. Take a look at the language that the design is using to communicate his character to you. And trying to just feel, if you met this character in real life, if you met a person who looked like that, how would you relate to that? What would you feel about that? How would you think about that? Now take a look at his new splash art and ask yourself those same questions. If you met someone who looked like that, who moved like that, who talked like that, who had that visual language going on, how would you feel about them? The first substantial difference between the two is, well, besides the color change, where old Swain was a lot of greens, new Swain is very red, is that old Swain, and there's no polite way to put this, was ugly. And I don't mean ugly as in he was a bad design, and I don't mean ugly as in sexually unattractive, because humans will find anything sexually attractive, believe you me. Many years on the internet have taught me so. But he is ugly in the sense of being unappealing, unapproaching. He is alienating. He is almost inhuman. Take a look at the design as you see it there. From the long, sharp, pointy nails to the scar tissue on his wrist to the weird chest and shoulder plates to the giant cowl that covers his mouth and most of his body to the red, unnatural eyes to the bushy eyebrows to the weird hairstyle to the kind of crusty look of his skin and the very unpleasant way he's posed and the way that the whole frame kind of makes him seem unpleasant and unappealing. Everything about Swain's old design was designed to be ugly. And again, not designed to be a bad design, but designed to be ugly, designed to be repellent, repulsive, a little uninviting, unappealing. And this is not a criticism of the design. This is what the design is trying to do, and it's succeeding at it. Because, well, there's a lot of reasons why this used to be the case. Swain is a villain, and Noxus back in the old days was unambiguously the villains. League of Legends used to have a somewhat more simplistic lore than it does nowadays, and it used to be that Demacia were the good guys, Noxus were the bad guys. All the Demacians were bright colors and, you know, big shoulder plates and lots of gold and lots of bright blues and lots of white and stuff, and they were the fantasy hero archetypes, while all the fantasy villain archetypes with a lot of red and green and purple and black and steel were concentrated in Noxus, where they were unambiguously the bad guys. Nowadays, that has kind of shifted, where Demacia has been kind of recast as a sort of proto-fascist, anti-magic dictatorship that is sort of nicer to live in than Noxus probably, but also they're sort of like really awful for certain types of people, and very rigid in its social structure, where Noxus has been cast more of a certainly brutal and kind of ugly and warlike and very obsessed with strength, but also a place where you have personal freedom to a greater extent than you have in Demacia. It's a place where you're much more free to be yourself than you are in Demacia to a certain extent. They've injected a lot of ambiguity into the League of Legends lore, and that's part of the reason why Swain's design had to change. And this is where we have to talk about something which I find quite unpleasant, and that is the history of ugliness in Western art, and indeed in most art, because it's a human and certainly a Western tradition for a very, very long time now that evil means ugly and ugly is evil. That is to say, if a character is monstrous, unpleasant, deformed, or has some kind of physical disability, a lot of the time in a lot of media, from fairy tales all the way up to modern Hollywood movies, being ugly, unattractive, unappealing is a sign of evil. It's a very simple visual metaphor that their outward evil, the outward ugliness reflects the ugliness inside. It's extremely basic. It's so basic that every single Saturday morning cartoon you've ever seen has probably to some extent used it to signify who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. It's why monsters are always ugly, or at least they were until Guillermo del Toro fucked it all up with Shape of Water and the internet got in on the action. Monsters tended to be ugly, repulsive, physically disgusting, distorted things that were not quite human, and all the heroes tended to be fair-haired and beautiful with great jawlines, and oh, they're very pretty and handsome, and tended to conform with the beauty ideals of whatever time produced them. And that's part of why Swain's design has had to change, is because, well, League of Legends isn't quite as simple with the black and white morality anymore. It wants to be more ambiguous. It wants to have more power fantasies and more diverse power fantasies going on. And as part of that initiative, well, you can't use he's ugly, therefore he's evil, and he's evil, therefore he's ugly as a design principle quite as much anymore. The reason I bring this up is because Swain is far from the only example of a character who has been redefined from ugly and unambiguously sort of evil to sort of more ambiguous and less outright evil. Here we have Scion. In his old... I don't really remember his lore that much, but as far as I recall his lore, he was just kind of reanimated undead guy who likes to murder. Because for some reasons and stuff. And that was pretty much all there was to him, and his design reflects that simplicity. He's got a bunch of skulls going on for no adequate reason. He's oozing green stuff because this is an undead, and he's got a skull face, sort of, and he speaks with an Arnold accent, and he's just this kind of shambolic, unappealing, unattractive mess of a design. And again, I don't mean attractive in the sense of physical sexual attraction. I mean attractive in the sense of being pleasant to look at. New Scion, well, everything has changed. New Scion's lore is, first of all, more ambiguous. He used to be a great war leader, someone who embodied the ideals of Noxus, of personal strength and honor, someone who charged into battle and who never relented and never let up, who has then been corrupted, brought back to life as this undead Hulk, who nonetheless retains some of the sense of personality from his previous life, even if it has been deteriorated. And here, rather than being presented as just this big, ugly, mass, brutish thing that swings an axe around for no adequate reason, here, Scion is, well, he's badass. He's cool. He's not, well, I mean, again, some people will be physically attracted to anything, but he's not attractive in the conventional sense, but he is aspirational, nonetheless. If I were to imagine myself a D&D character who is a giant undead Hulk who smashes into the enemy lines and drives them before you, that is the kind of thing I would imagine. I would not necessarily so much imagine this. He has become cool. He has become non-ugly. He has become appealing, where before he was decidedly not. Another prime example is Urgot, who used to be this thing, this shambling, ugly, distorted, bloated mass of corpse flesh stuffed with green ooze, just kind of slathering itself across the battlefield. Really ugly, unappealing, repulsive, repugnant. Just everything about him was horrible in that sense. And he was, in terms of personality and lore, just an unambiguous monster. He's an evil guy who died, and then we revived him, and now he's murdering people again because of reasons. New Urgot, very different story. First of all, his design. He's no longer this bloated, unappealing husk of just of stuff with pipes sticking out of it and kind of oozing and being gooey and stuff. Now he's muscled, he's strong, he's presented as powerful, menacing, dangerous, but also intelligent. He's clearly, as we see in the picture here, in command of some kind of social structure. And that again reflects the lore changes to the character. He is no longer just a mindless, shambling corpse that likes to murder people. He was a proud warrior who was betrayed by Noxus and feels betrayed by Noxus's ideals and wants to restore the country to what he considers its true heritage. There's a lot of ambiguity mixed in there. There's a lot more personality, a lot more depth. And in order to reflect that, his design has been changed away from the ugly, away from the unappealing, away from the disgusting. Yet another example is good old Yorick. Yorick, who used to be this shambling, hunchbacked, ugly, ghoul-summoning kind of mess of a thing, with a tragic backstory for his time, I feel, but nonetheless was presented mostly in terms of just some kind of undead, unappealing, disgusting monstrosity, who becomes, in the updates and in the new lore, a warrior monk, a badass, a real, like, powerful, commanding, someone with personality and a complex character backstory. And again, it's the changes to the lore that are reflected in the changes to the design. Another prime example is Trundle, who used to be literally a shit troll. Like, literally is just a garbage troll who lives in dirt and mud and shit, and who uses dirt and mud and shit as weapons on the battlefield. This is what he used to be, and then once the lore demanded that he be folded into the Freljord faction, this is what he becomes. He's certainly not, again, some people will be attracted to anything. He's certainly not conventionally attractive, but now he's powerful, he's aspirational, he's something that, again, looks, from a certain point of view, heroic, even if it is evil. And that's why I'm bringing up Swain. I'm using Swain as an excuse to talk about this stuff, is that League of Legends, as a franchise, as an aesthetic, as a property, is moving away from, first of all, from the unambiguously evil. They tend to inject a certain amount of nuance into every single design and every single character they try to make. Even the really evil, nasty bad guy ones. Serath got a complex and tragic backstory, and it's sort of been a trend across the whole game. And at the same time, they're also rejecting ugliness. Now, there are reasons for this outside of what I discussed. It's not just about not using the trope, the cliche that ugly means evil. It's not just about that. It's also about, as I think was discussed by Morello at some point in the past, that ugly champions get played less, no matter what the state of their balance. And I believe that, actually, completely when he says that, because what they're selling when they're selling a game, and when they're selling the League of Legends experience, is the chance to be cool, to be badass, to pull off great moments and do fantastic things in teamfights and be cool and be a hero of some kind in this universe. And that kind of doesn't jive with all of this. So there's a pressure, I think, in terms of what the fans want. Like, when you design a champion, you want people to want to play it. And if the unappealing, unattractive, ugly look of a character, and again, ugly and unappealing doesn't mean bad design, when the ugly and unappealing character design of a character means that people play the character less as designers, both visual and in terms of gameplay, you're going to be drawn towards kind of getting rid of that, taking it out of the mix. There's also some wider structural things going on. First of all, gaming has come a long way since League of Legends was first released. When League of Legends was first released, it essentially looked like a slightly better looking Warcraft 3 mod. Like, it was very much on that level with these big, blocky, ugly character designs. And you should take a look at Ashe's oldest character model, because that thing is freaking hilarious. It had a very different aesthetic because computers were able to do very different things back in those days. And fantasy aesthetic in video games was highly influenced, as indeed it still is, by the output of things like Blizzard Entertainment, who kind of, well, first of all, defined the look of the MOBA just by inventing the MOBA genre, or rather, some of their modders invented the MOBA genre. I know I'm going to get crucified if I don't correct that, but their aesthetic came to define that, and it's present also in games like Dota 2, and even something like Heroes of Newerth used to have a very Warcraftian aesthetic to it. But now League of Legends is the biggest MOBA in the world, at least for now, and it's trying to set its own course. It's trying to define its own designs, and part of that nowadays it means you have to be appealing. Even doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't always have to be cute or handsome, but it has to be appealing. And I think it's fine. Like, I want to be clear in this video. I think that is fine. I don't think it's a problem. I think if you can get more people to play each champion, that's ultimately good for the game and it's good for everyone. But as an artist, and this is the point of this entire video and this entire rant, as an artist, I always feel a little sad when the unapologetically ugly, when the unapologetically repulsive and unappealing gets sort of sanded off the edges of a game's or a universe's aesthetic. I like monstrous, ugly, unappealing, disgusting champions. I like seeing artists explore those things visually. I think it's a very rich and fertile ground for exploration to take something which is just completely and utterly unappealing and say, now play that, now be that in the video game. For me, from an artistic standpoint, for me, that's interesting. And League of Legends being one of the biggest video games in the entire world, I kind of wish that they would lean into that more, that they would kind of re-embrace the ugly, re-embrace the monstrous, the unappealing, the disgusting, instead of sanding all the edges off and just polishing it until no matter what the character is, well, he's always going to be pretty or handsome or cool or badass. I would like an uncool champion or two. I would like a disgusting, unappealing, fetid, miserable blob of a thing like Urgot to be in the game, not as a major selling point for the video game, but just to be part of the aesthetic, to be part of the world. And I don't think the Void Monsters cut that, because someone like Rek'Sai, someone like Kha'Zix, even someone like Kog'Maw, they don't really fill that spot. Kog'Maw is cute, Rek'Sai and Kha'Zix are both badass. Vel'Koz is also a really cool, sleek design. The only one of the Void Monsters who remains who are really monstrous is Cho'Gath, and, you know, after this, how long is that gonna last? So yeah, I guess that's really the point I was trying to get at here, is that League of Legends as an aesthetic has moved away and is in a process of moving away from the ugly, from the unappealing, into something that is a little bit more generic, that is a little bit more mass appealing. Not necessarily worse, not necessarily bad, but different. And I kind of lament that loss just a little bit. Anyway, I would like to say thank you to SkinSpotlights for being nice enough to put up all these champion previews so that I can run them as background footage in my video. You'll find a link in the description to his channel and to that video that you're seeing right now. You should go and subscribe because he puts a hell of a lot of work into this stuff. And if you have any comments, you should feel extremely free to leave them down below. I try to respond to anything that I have a useful response to. I certainly read all of my comments, so feel free to, do that. You can subscribe if you would like more talky bits about video games and aesthetics and artistic disciplines and stuff like that, and also other stuff. I have fun things on my channel, and my name has been TBSkyne. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and I will see you, I suppose, in the next video.